But this notion that really bad people are doing it, that's entirely a straw man argument created to have somebody say, well, oh, we can't let that happen. Really bad people are coming in and using children. We have to put a stop to this somehow because we don't want bad people coming here. So he's creating this thing in order to explain something that is itself inexcusable. He's excusing it by saying, well, there's a reason why we have to do this extreme thing because this other extreme thing is happening. And so in order to counter that, extreme defenses are necessary. But he's making up the terrible thing in order to, the terrible threat in order to excuse the terrible reaction. He wants to do the terrible reaction because I don't know why. I mean, it's already shown that it hasn't really affected the amount of people coming in. There are actually more people coming in than there were before he started doing that. So I don't think that's the point. And already also notice that there was widespread condemnation of this across the border. Not across the border, across the board, excuse me, all over the place, all over this country. People from both parties rose up and said, no, stop doing this. And he was forced to stop doing this, or at least to temporarily halt it, because so many people were against it. And now he's trying to do it again. So you have this basically minority president, and by that I mean he was not elected by the majority of people in this country or even the majority of people who voted. He was elected because of the Electoral College, not because the majority of voters voted for him. So a minority of people elected him, and he's doing whatever he wants, even though the majority of people don't want him to do it. And that's pretty audacious, if you ask me. And there you go, audacious. That's the thing. He uses his audaciousness to do things that, enough things that Republicans want, that they are willing to step aside and let him do things like this in exchange for it. You notice the point about McConnell talking about confirming Republican-nominated judges at a record pace and change the U.S. court system forever. That's pretty serious stuff. And they're trying to do that now. They're using Trump in order to do that, and Trump is using them in order to get his anti-immigration agenda enacted. That's the exchange. That's the bargain that is being made in Washington at the moment. So when I talk about voting, that's one big reason why voting is important. You can't sit this one out. You can't say, there's no candidate that I really like, or both parties are the same. No, they're not. And on and on and on. This would be, at this election, I am talking and advocating strategic voting. Vote for the people who are going to affect the way this country is run right now. There, how's that? I'm being very careful here. I don't know. I feel like I'm walking a fine line in not being advocating things that I'm not supposed to advocate on the air, but yeah, so I'm trying. So here's the flip side of that. You say, oh, but the president's not running, is not up for election, so what does it matter who I vote for? Here, this next story will tell you why it matters who you vote for. So this is entitled County Officials Shutting ICE Out from Local Jails. And it reads as follows. While the aggressive immigration enforcement policies of the Trump administration continue nearly unabated at the national level, activists on the left are succeeding on a smaller scale as they convince local governments to end jail contracts with ICE. Their hope is that shutting ICE out from the jails that hold immigrants awaiting deportation and court hearings will pressure the Trump administration to loosen its zero-tolerance policy towards undocumented immigrants. Local officials are yielding to this scaled-down, localized version of the abolish ICE movement in both liberal and conservative areas. In California, local governments in Contra Costa County, Sacramento County, and the city of Santa Ana recently pulled out of their contracts with ICE. The same thing happened in Williamson County, Texas, which will no longer hold immigrants come this January, and in Atlanta, where the mayor issued an executive order to stop accepting ICE detainees. The latest success for the movement was in Hudson County, New Jersey, when local legislators in diverse and democratic Hudson County met in July to renew a long-standing contract with the federal government to detain immigrants. They quietly voted on the deal without so much as announcing it beforehand on the meeting agenda. The resulting firestorm blindsided the all-Democratic Board of Freeholders, which run the county. A group of local religious leaders sued. Protests outside the Hudson County Jail, which detains nearly 700 immigrants, grew so loud that the jail director said the noise stirred a near riot in an immigrant wing of the facility. Finally, last Thursday, the freeholders voted 6-3 to end their multi-million-dollar contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement by 2020. Quote, "We come to you tonight because you do have the power, and it may not be a lot," said Carl Schwartz, one of the scores of ICE opponents to speak at the 4.5-hour freeholder meeting. It may be for one county in one state over one detention center, but if we can get this thing shut down here in Hudson County, we can show what we really stand for in North Jersey. Hudson County has a 43% foreign-born population, and it's run entirely by Democrats, so it is particularly vulnerable to scrutiny. Opposition is also mounting in the two neighboring counties, Essex and Bergen, which are likewise filling their jails with ICE detainees. Together, the three counties hold as many as 2,000 immigrants at a given time and collectively take in about $6 million per month from ICE, a near 50% increase from the end of the Obama administration. Excuse me. Activists were arrested earlier this year protesting the ICE contract in Essex County. And in Bergen County, attention turned to how immigrants are forbidden from hugging their visiting relatives after the sheriff who runs the jail resigned in the wake of being caught on tape in a racist rant. Ooh, remember that. Activists are, however, frustrated excuse me, that they're not making even more progress. The 2020 contract expiration date that the Hudson County freeholders approved last week didn't satisfy a variety of advocates who say immigrants shouldn't be marooned in the jail where conditions have been described as inhumane for at least 2 more years. They want the contract canceled immediately, which the freeholders have the power to do. But time is needed, freeholders said, to find ways to make up for the tens of millions of dollars that the county receives annually from ICE. There's a strong possibility. Let me try that again. There's a strong possibility that will phase out sooner than 2020, said freeholder Anthony Romano. So it's not just rhetoric. In the meantime, the freeholders gave their support last week to 2 new oversight boards to improve detainee treatment at the jail. The Hudson County Correctional Facility has been plagued by problems, suicides, poor medical care, bad food. But freeholders were floored when 3 recently released detainees spoke at the meeting last week to tell of abuse they suffered there, including sexual assault by other ICE inmates. My experience at Hudson was some of the worst of my life, said Leslie Gonzalez, a 25-year-old from Cuba. I was a victim of rape. Gonzalez alleged that he reported 2 incidents of rape to a corrections officer who works with ICE, but nothing happened. He then pointed to the officer who was in the crowd at the meeting. The officer, a corrections department lieutenant who was the jail's ICE liaison, confirmed that he was indeed told about the incident. The jail director, Ron Edwards, then interceded to say he'd investigate the incidents. He added that he has a zero-tolerance policy for assault, except apparently, editorial aside, when they're reported prior to him being put on the spot. End of editorial aside. But there's another wrinkle to the situation for immigrants at the jail, who now make up the majority of inmates. Almost all of them were picked up by ICE in New York, which makes them eligible for pro bono legal representation provided through city and state funds. With detainees moved out of Hudson County, they could be sent far away without access to their free attorneys. Immigrants without lawyers are far likelier to be deported. Families and lawyers and their communities are here, said Ryan Brewer of the Bronx Defender, a public defender agency that represents detainees. He said immigrants need to be in proximity to legal resources to actually win their cases and remain permanently in the United States or obtain release on bond. So, sorry again for the editorial aside, but some things just jump out at me as just being so ridiculous that I have to make a comment on them. All right. So there you have an example of how even at the local level, even in the tiny little local level, the communities that we have here, it is possible to push back against the larger force of the federal government when they're doing things that you just don't agree with, you think are wrong. I am fairly secure in saying that most of the people that listen to this show are more likely to agree with me than not. I can't imagine any reason, unless you just like torturing yourself, that you would be of the Trumpian mindset and that you would regularly listen to this show. Maybe you do it just so that you have something and someone to yell at on your radio, like you don't get enough opportunities to yell in your life and be angry about things. And so you listen to this show in order to just like go, you, and, you know, let me have it verbally as you listen to me talk. And that's fine, you know, if you really want to do that. But I kind of doubt that anybody is masochistic enough to want to put themselves through listening to me week after week, just so that they have an opportunity to yell at their radio. So it's more than likely that if you listen, it's because you go, oh, that's interesting. I kind of agree with that, or maybe I don't entirely agree with that, but I'm interested in your reasoning and in understanding more about this issue generally. And if you do, then you're probably going to agree with me, for example, that Trump's use of straw man argument is ridiculous, and that the people who believe that sort of thing apparently are coming to the issue already having an opinion. I think immigrants are bad. I'm looking for someone who's going to tell me that they're bad and tell me that they're going to do something. They're going to respond to immigration and immigrants coming here as if immigrants are bad, because I think they're bad. And then so any argument that supports that will be a welcome one. And they'll go, well, yeah, that makes sense, because immigrants are obviously bad, or so I think they are. And therefore, it makes sense to me that they would be bad people doing bad things. So when Trump says they're very bad people coming here, the people who think that immigrants are already bad are going to go, well, yeah, of course they are. And he's right. Who could argue with that? Because we all already know somehow that they're bad without even needing any evidence to prove that to be the case. Those of us who think that immigrants are people, dare I say that, immigrants are people too, and that they come here for a variety of different reasons, but mostly because they just want to be here. They want something that's here, and they are offering their services, their work, their ideas, whatever, in order to, you know, as an exchange for being here, They want, obviously, I don't think very many people would get up from their home in some country and go, you know what? I'm packing up all my belongings. I'm going to the U.S. I'm going to risk crossing the border. I'm going to risk the anti-immigrant fever that Trump's trying to stir up. I'm going to risk all these things basically because I just want to go there and hang out and put my feet up and do nothing or commit crimes or whatever. I really doubt that that's ever happening, but let's say somebody did. Okay, that's one out of how many hundreds of thousands, millions of people? But could be somebody somewhere. But yeah, so I am obviously making a point, and I'm trying very hard to not state it directly, but my basic point is you really need to vote, and you need to start thinking about it now. You need to think about it regularly until Election Day. You can vote early, possibly, and maybe you should get out and do that. My contention is that we need to restore some balance in our government so that it is not entirely controlled by the current party in power. That is my contention. But my suggestion to you is that you vote and that you don't sit this out and that you don't go, well, yeah, it's inconvenient. I don't feel like it. It takes too much time. My vote doesn't count, et cetera, et cetera. As you notice from this local counties pushing back ICE, even the local election, even dog catcher, whatever the local positions are that are being voted on, they have some power. These national parties are supported all the way down the line to the local level by all of the people, all the voters, of course, but all the infrastructure, all the people that work together to say, yes, we are X party. And they support each other. And they generally have a common way of looking at things. It's not to say that all Democrats believe X and all Republicans believe Y. That is not the case. But there is a lean that the people who join these parties, there's a reason they join the party, because they believe in a certain set of things that the party's platform encompasses. And so they feel that by supporting that party, they are supporting those things. And at this point, apparently, people remain Republicans because whatever they think of Trump, they support the effort all the way up. So when you have Trump saying, oh, well, we need to, separate families at the border. We're going to take kids away from their parents, or do what they have done in some situations where they've actually put kids up for adoption, and when they deported their parents back to the country of origin, they kept the kids here and put them up for adoption. Some parents are not getting their kids back ever because they were separated. There wasn't really a way intended to get them back together. They didn't even try, or they didn't care to try or to keep records. And so you got these kids, don't know what to do with them, put them up for adoption. So basically, by attempting to come here as a family, you're having your kids taken away from you permanently. Apparently, that's not bad enough that the Republican who's running for city council, it's not bad enough that they're going to go, you know what, I can't run as a Republican, because as a Republican, as a member of this party, I am supporting that. That's at the top of the ticket. I'm at the bottom of the ticket, but I am supporting that by supporting the party. And the party supports the president, and the president is doing this stuff. So the stuff that Trump is doing is being supported all the way down the line by these people. Apparently that's okay with them. I don't know how that's possible. I am sure there are some who say, oh, well, I don't agree with that. But apparently you don't disagree with it enough to quit the party or stop supporting them. So that's why local elections matter, because the people at the bottom of the ticket are working to support the people at the top of the ticket, going all the way up. And that's just how it works in this country. We only have two parties, two viable parties. There are lots of other parties. I don't know if there are lots of them, but there are a few other ones. Independents, Green Party, whatever. But the system is so big, the two-party system has grown to be so large that it is very, very difficult for anybody else to get elected to do anything outside of that system. I don't necessarily approve of that. In fact, I don't approve of that. I don't think that's a good thing. I think that is a big flaw in our system, because it leads to this dichotomous thinking, like, are Democrats for it? Then I'm against it. And it kind of doesn't even matter what the thing is. It's just those guys are wrong. And if they're wrong on these basic things, then they're wrong on everything. They must be wrong. So I must take the counter position. I mean, we have this kind of weird sense that there are two sides to every question. I mean, you hear that all the time. And this is partly a flaw, I think, in our education system, because they don't teach that there are many sides to every question, that there are multiple shades of agreeing and disagreeing and being right and being wrong. I mean, this whole notion that there is a right answer and a wrong answer is even flawed. There are lots of right in some ways and wrong in other ways. Is it more right than it is wrong? Is it rightish or wrongish? I don't know. It's like there are so many degrees of everything. But I know, at least the way I was taught growing up, it's like there are two sides to every question. And it's really hard to describe disagreements on things without boiling it down to you're for it or against it. You want it or you don't want it. It's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, we tend to, and maybe it's just a human thing, is just like it's so much easier to just pick yes or no, in or out, up or down, to turn everything into a two-question situation. But be that as it may, that's the system that we're stuck with. So what disturbs me about elections and the way people talk about them is this notion that, like, well, if they ever have a candidate that I really like, I'll vote for them. Otherwise, I'm not going to vote. So you're saying your vote is, I don't know, it's like it's a statement of love and affection and absolute fidelity and all these sorts of things. No, it's a strategic thing. You're saying, okay, you've got these choices here. Let's say you have three choices. You have an independent candidate running. You have a Democrat and you have a Republican running. Well, you can look at the polling and you can go, okay, like 2% of the people are saying that they like the independent candidate. 48% are saying they like the Democrat, and 49% or whatever are saying they like the Republican, or whatever those numbers end up being. And you go, well, but I like the independent candidate, so I'm going to vote for this person. Well, what are you doing by doing that? You're making a statement to yourself. You're not making a statement to anybody else, because they're not going to report it on the news. Like, well, this candidate won, but, Nathan Smith from 32 West 4th Street really liked the independent candidate, so he voted for him. And we just want to make sure that everybody knows that he liked that and he thought that was great. That's sadly not how it works. It doesn't matter so much if you like somebody. It matters if you think they can win and if they're going to do something that you approve of more than the person on the other side. Because really you have two sides. You have two sides that are running in virtually every election, at least every major office. You have either a Democrat or a Republican who's going to win that. If there's a good chance the independent will win, then yeah, by all means vote for them if there's a possibility. But if there's not a possibility, then you're throwing your vote away. And I know a lot of people will argue with that. No, it's a matter of principle. Okay, if your principles are more important to you than what actually happens, then by all means, go with your principles. But if you care about what's actually happening and what's going to happen and what you can do about it, then you have to vote strategically. Spend all year supporting your independent party. Fight like the devil for it. And then when it comes time to vote, if you don't see that there's a real positive possibility that they're going to win, then vote for the least bad of the other two. Because seriously, in the way things are set up right now, it's not going to do you any good. I know there, and I can hear people saying it right now. There are a lot of people that will argue with me to death on this point. And I'll argue back with you because we've seen the whole notion like, oh, they're all corporatist and it doesn't matter who you vote for, you know, the corporations win. Yeah, to a certain extent that is true. But there's a very big difference in how each of these corporatist elites ends up behaving. So maybe on your one special interest issue that matters to you very much, the treatment of animals, the abortion, immigration, I don't know what it might be, religion in schools. I mean, if you're like a one-issue person and you're voting for a party based on that one issue and you're ignoring everything else, then again, I think you're wasting your vote, because in the end, all sorts of things are going to happen because of this vote. I think voting has to be strategic and it has to be very open-minded. You have to look at the big picture and say, do we want to go this way generally or this way generally? And whichever way you would like to push things, that's how you have to vote. You have to vote for the side that's going the direction, not on that specific issue that you love and hold so dear, because that issue is just one of many things. So you may save the whales, for example, just off the top of my head, and you know, dozens or hundreds of thousands of people will die in a war because of your vote, because you were too busy trying to save whales and you were ignoring the fact that all these people are going to die. So, I don't know. I'm ranting here, and a lot of people are probably not liking what I'm saying, but I really think that we need to all vote. We need to get out there and do it. And at this point, I'll just contradict myself and say, I don't care who you vote for, just vote. I want to see this election be the most votes of any election that in history. I'd like to see close to full voting this election. This is an extremely important election, and we really need to get out and vote. I've used up my time. I've made people mad. Sorry, but that's just the way I'm thinking. You have been listening to CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana, 104.5 FM. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.